Hey there, everyone. It's me, Kirsty, here on the Ananda Rose channel with the Neurodiversity segment, the Neurodiversity Controversy segment even, where we talk about all things that are related to neurodiversity from all sorts of angles and perspectives, because I feel so strongly that it's beneficial for us to open up the conversation and look at it from all different angles so we can support each other and we can support our children. And I've got Donna Stichbury with me here today, who was introduced to me by the lovely Ayana, and I'm so happy to connect with her. So Donna is the Relationship Facilitator, and she has such a beautiful heart-centered approach to her work. She works with children, she works with parents, extending out to the family unit, and she brings in all sorts of experience, including PICLA work, attachment theory, circle of security, and yeah, she just has a beautiful mission to support. So welcome, Donna. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And so there's so much to talk about. I'm just saying before, the conversation could go anywhere, but I would really love to just hear a little bit about your backstory. So how you came into this line of work and how it evolved for you. It's a big question.
So it's a big question, and I think I want to describe it more. I was an early childhood teacher, I was a mum, and I didn't realise I'd experienced developmental trauma. I didn't realise that my nervous system was quite fragile, and I was working in an early childhood environment, amazing teachers, but it was a very stressful environment. And what I didn't realise then was that when you're in a stressful environment, everyone's attachment insecurity is supersonic. So where it's really started for me was on my front steps, literally crying out to the universe, going, help me with my anger. I want this to just make it go away. And it's really interesting because I think that was the wrong question. Because what I've learned on my journey was actually the anger was actually really justified. It's just no one had ever shown me how to release it in a healthy way. So then there was this whistle-stop tour, really, where I was introduced to Kimberly Crisp. So Kimberly Crisp and Penny Brownlee had brought in the PICLA approach into New Zealand. And I remember being in Kimberly Crisp's PD, as a full-day PD, and I literally bawled my eyes out. And I was actually told that it was professionally inappropriate to bawl my eyes out like I did. But I had never, ever heard anyone talk about being with children quite so respectfully. And my friend watched me that day, and because I was given a choice of two pathways to follow, and one of the pathways was with Penny Brownlee and the Dance with Me in the Heart. And I went to her retreat. It was over 4 days, 1 week, and I think we was away for a month, another 4 weeks. Well, after that retreat, I literally threw out probably 98% of what I'd learned on my degree, because I was like, this is the way we need to be with children.
And sorry, can I interject for one moment? Just for people who don't know what PICLA is, or Penny Brownlee's work, what's a super simple explanation of what the PICLA approach is?
It's the most incredible, respectful way to be with children. And it's about children naturally unfolding. And I think that has been the beauty for me. So Emmy PICLA she was given the responsibility of an orphanage just after World War II in Budapest. And to start off with, she had nurses that were all about order and cleanliness, and she decided that she was going to actually sack all of them, because what her main mission was was those children did not come out of the orphanage with emotional deprivation. And so what she did is she looked for, and what I would say now is that she looked for secure, local country girls that were nurturing to children. And she created a choreography because she had limited resources. So this is not something that you would do in a pair. So again, we're very much told by Ananda Rose, who is Emmy Pickler's daughter, that there's one way to be a teacher and there's one way to be a parent. And so we never ever push a parent into their head. It's always heartfelt when you're in a relationship with your child. And well, that's what I love. So I've been going there. So after I did everything that I could with Penny and Kimberly, I literally started traveling the world. I went to Sydney, I went to LA before I eventually got to Budapest. And I've been now with them for the last 7 years. I'm on my final case study before I start my thesis, if my thesis is accepted. And what I would really love to work on for my thesis is about the adults, because this is so, again, this is where the next part of my work came in, because I used to facilitate Penny's parent-infant classes and parent-toddler classes. And I got to her toddler classes and I was looking around the room and I'm like, something's not right here. The energy's not right. And I was like, what am I seeing? Because I've watched the most respectful parents in my infant classes, but in this space, there's like a jagged energy. What I was actually seeing was insecure attachment. I didn't know what it was, but I was actually watching insecure attachment. I naturally fell into, because I was looking for something that could support the parents still in relationships, because I was watching a lot of parents going off to do more power over. Because there's lots of stuff out there where it's actually power over children. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to find something that is going to meet the needs for these mums who have got children that are toddlers, that is still relationship. It's still that free and equal human beings. And that's where I found circle security, which was my first entry into attachment work. I then went into looking at the nervous system with Stuart Shanker's self-reg, and I started to see that there was these increases that happened when people got stressed. So it's really interesting. I was like, I really felt like I was actually inventing something new until I met Donna Stichbury, who does interplay, and I realized there's something called modern attachment theory, which is actually where you look at everything all together. And that's what I do now. I look at the nervous system, I look at attachment, I look at biology, and I look at it all together, because all of us, and Donna Stichbury talks about this, the elephant in the room is that there's not one of us that's really had 100% secure attachment. So there will be times when we're stressed. And so, and something that's not talked about enough is that you can be secure. So you could be secure in your partnership with your partner, but you might have insecurities in your work life. And so secure attachment doesn't actually mean that it's all areas of your life. Depending on how you've unfolded, you could be absolutely secure at work, but not secure at home. And I think this is the work that I love as well, because it's really non-judgmental, and it's just accepting that each one of us has been programmed in our early years of life. And so for me, I changed. I used to be called Peaceful Beginnings because I love this work with parents and infants. But what I started to see, and what I was seeing back then, was that there was parents that had insecure attachments, or they were neurodivergent, or they'd experienced trauma. And through no fault of their own, it was affecting the relationship they were having with their children. And they were actually feeling really guilty. Why could they not have this relationship with their child that they really wanted? And so this is how I've changed my work. My work has changed because I never want a parent to think that they're not good enough. And I want them to understand that for all of us, there's a part of the brain, it's called the reticular activating center. And it's really, really suggestible in the first 2 years of life because of the brainwaves that the children are in them, but it is also just as susceptible to be programmed up to about 6 or 7, just because of how the brain is and just because of how the children are. So I think they're in their theta or their alpha brainwaves, which just makes them more susceptible to suggestion.
Yeah, and some people say it's like they're in a constant state of hypnosis. So yeah, there's all different ways of saying it, but it's basically we're very programmable at that age. Yeah.
And this is the importance of really celebrating play for children, because when children go into that deep play, then yes, they are in a meditative state. And it's the most powerful way of learning. And I think we're forgetting that. We're forgetting how important children naturally unfolding are. And so again, part of the work with Emmy Pickler is the emotionally topped up child will play deeply. Now, I can go into many early childhood centres and I can watch children and they look like they're playing, but they're only surface level playing. They're not deep playing. And there's a difference when you see a child. And I would imagine you would have seen this, Kirsty, a child involved in really, really deep play. It looks different. And it's like the child is in this little bubble by themselves. And it's really beautiful to watch.
It's almost like, as a sensitive person, you can feel, the three-dimensionality of this little universe that they've created when they're,
Absolutely. And it's really special. And I think the sadness for me is there's so many places that don't realize that it's not happening, because there's a level of tension and not a level where the child can really, that maybe maybe there's too much structure, maybe there's not enough time. So sometimes when we look at the day,
to drop in,
so to actually drop into that deep play takes time. And if we keep starting children, then they're not going to get into that. And it's actually really, really important play for them to get into. And this is what Penny Brownlee, she was really advocating for. Like I say, she did a huge amount of work for us in New Zealand, because before that we were looking at children as objects to change their nappies to feed, when now we understand that they're free and equal human beings. We can leave the space. And I think that's the beauty, is that when you do this work and you leave the space, again, I can remember a little girl, I met her when she was 1, before she was really talking. And again, when we would go and freshen up her nappy, I would leave the gaps for her to respond, because this is very much part of the Pickler way, is that we want to leave those gaps as interdependence for when she wants to join in, but we don't demand that. But I had this image in my head of what she was actually saying in these conversations. And then when she did start talking, like, her voice was actually what I thought it was. I still look back to that day going, when did she really start talking? Because I had this conversation going on with her way before she was actually talking. And and children know, they know they're valuable. And that's my whole thing. They know when they're being treated right. So when someone doesn't, then they are going to actually be a lot more, hey, this is not okay. And I think this is what I really want to advocate for, because so many of us haven't had that, and we haven't. And this is where our wounds have actually come from, because we've had power over relationships from the adults, rather than actually seeing that power can be shared, even from a very, very young age.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I feel really strongly about, is, in whatever way works, encouraging the parents and the caregivers to drop in, to trust their own intuition. And sometimes to get to that place of trusting your intuition, it can take a lot of going through all those layers of, what happened to me as a child? What beliefs and patterns came out of what happened to me? Can I notice that that's not the truth? And it's a big process sometimes,
Yep.
as you know.
And
as you know.
yeah, and sometimes the simplest, I've had so much success as well with just parents surrendering, literally letting go of expectations and the beauty that comes, because what, you know, if we want to look at the science side of this, then when we reframe something, then we're working with the polyvagal nerve and we're relaxing. You know, it's more, when we reframe, then we're actually working with our nervous system. When we work with our nervous system, we're also switching off our wounds. And so some of the most beautiful times, again, bedtime battles, mealtime battles, freshen up battles, have actually been with that surrender, and literally with that surrender and with that relax. And again, I think that was one of the things I learned from Stuart Shanker, was that when we're in a stress state, the child can feel it, and then they also mirror that stress state. And sometimes just by working on our own regulation, we don't really have to do anything different apart from relaxing the situation. And I know it sounds really simple, but a lot of the time parents will come to me and I'll hold space and we'll talk, and then the problem seems to disintegrate, but it's not disintegrating. All I've done is I've held space, and I've held space for that emotional way for that parent to feel seen, to feel heard, which so many parents aren't actually, they don't get seen or heard. And so if you're not seen and heard, you're going to get more and more stressed. And so sometimes just having that ear to listen to, that this is actually big for you, and then you can let it go, and then suddenly something new comes in, and it's like I say, it's not your ABC textbook stuff, but for me this is actually how relationships work. And sometimes it's actually by recognizing, hey, actually it's something to do with me in this relationship, and maybe I need to look at my own regulation.
Yeah, children are so good at showing us where our pain points are or what our quirks are, all of those things. And, you know, and it's all about the nervous system. And so I love, one of the things that really I love that you've been talking about is not shaming or blaming parents, because there's so many reasons that a certain situation can be arising, say for the child's behavior. And the last thing a parent needs is to feel judged or sent on a kind of cookie cutter parenting course.
No,
And they may have, or you know, they may already know all of that stuff. And so I'm just circling back to the neurodivergence piece. There's an
absolutely.
obvious connection because, you know, a child and or parents may have experienced trauma, and, you know, depending on your definition of trauma, we've all experienced things that stress the nervous system, that cause us to have layers of conditioning. And then to me, being neurodivergent is, you know, it can be thinking in certain ways or having a different perspective. But the really key aspect of it to me is that usually you're really sensitive, and you're sensitive in a whole bunch of ways. And often it will be referred to as, you know, heightened neuroception. So the nervous system is really sensitive, right?
So when you
And
talk about
yeah,
neuroception, the very first place is to start with felt safety. And I think it's more felt safety is actually feeling safe inside, it's feeling safe outside, and it's that safe in between. And you're not going to get anywhere if you don't have that safety. And it's been really interesting. One of the that I've actually been sharing with people, just 2 words, because people say, well, how do you know if you're dysregulated or not? And I'm like, well, there's 2 words. Are you in connection behavior, or are you in protection behavior? And that is really the key to what you're talking about, that neuroception and that felt safety is, are we doing things to protect ourselves for safety, or are we doing things and staying connected? And so if we're in connection behavior, we're going to be in the parasympathetic, and we're going to be in that rest and digest. And if we're not in that rest and digest, then we're somewhere else within the nervous system. And that means we're actually working with the nervous system. And particularly when it starts to get big, again, I really, really advocate, and it's particularly seems to be little boys get totally misjudged because of the nervous system. And it's more, and then you throw in attachment insecurities of the adults around them. And these little boys are trying to come in on the bottom of the attachment circle. And they might have an adult that doesn't feel comfortable with big emotions. And suddenly you see this child that is absolutely craving for connection, exhibited it in ways to make the adult feel how they're feeling inside. But what actually ends up happening is that we end up judging these children. Or again, it could be the adults as well, because I think this is something that I really want to normalize. Because if you are neurodivergent, if you have experienced trauma, you are more susceptible to having a smaller window of tolerance. So again, if you haven't heard of that, it's look it up. Daniel Siegel actually talked about that. And this is a really good way for parents to understand, because the nervous system isn't like Zen. It actually flows. And what we really want to do is we want to increase, and this is what people call resilience, and we want to increase this up. And so we do that by increasing the window of tolerance, and that needs felt safety. You need to feel safe to experience things that you haven't experienced before. And you need to do that through co-regulation. But the thing is, so many of us, because of the society that we've come through, haven't had that co-regulation. And so suddenly we're asking parents, we're asking teachers to co-regulate with children through emotions that they've never been held safely through. So again, going back to me on those front steps, no one had held me through how to feel anger in a safe way. And anger is absolutely a really appropriate emotion, as long as we don't go hurting other people, you know. And I think because it tells us when something's actually wrong. So if anger comes up, there's actually something wrong and we need to listen to that. But so often we've been told to shut it down. And I would be saying absolutely neurodivergent people that have experienced trauma, because of that neuroception, we're more aware. We can actually feel things a lot more, because it's actually been part of what we've needed to do to stay safe. And again, this is where that judgment piece comes in. I've watched children who literally become the blame monkeys. You know, there was a little boy I worked with, and I, again, there was no diagnosis, but I was working in a nervous system way. So I was trying to strip back all the different hidden stress that I could find for this little boy. But what really got me was there was one day and something happened. And I always come in as no bullies or victims. It's more, I like to hold the space. I like to hold what's going on without making judgments. And so I came into this space and I held the space and I asked, you know, what was going on? And they said this little boy's name. And I'm like, he's sick today. He's not even here. But it had become part of that group, or that little early childhood centre, that he had become the blame monkey.
Yeah, the scapegoat. Yeah.
The scapegoat. You think how many children, even before diagnosis, because also this is another thing that, again, when we look at the science of things, children that have experienced, who are neurodivergent, it's nothing to do with their brains, but it unfolds in a different way. So when we come to have that part of the brain, the neocortex, which is about impulse control, that doesn't come on until later. Doesn't mean anything about intelligence, but particularly if we're looking at a kindergarten environment with 4-year-olds, we could have 4-year-old children that have already got that impulse control actually happening, and other children that don't. But then what we're saying, or what I've seen happening as an early childhood teacher, is that those children that still haven't got that impulse control and they're not able to stop those impulses. So I know that if I'm upset, I'm not supposed to hit on someone else. But I've got that part of the brain functioning because I'm a 50-year-old woman. But for a 4-year-old boy, that's not come online yet. And then you put on top of that, you put on hidden stress, and it's even more harder to control those impulses. And then that suddenly that child then gets blamed because of things that are happening, and they're told that they're, you know, they're aggressive and whatever else is coming out. But suddenly we're creating an image of a child that's not true, because that child knows who they are, but they're struggling with a small window of tolerance. And I really want people to start understanding this, to understand, but it also goes for adults. I had a huge meltdown myself at work trying to support this little boy. And it was a meltdown, but it was more, even though I held the staff team, I held everyone, that moment was still considered misbehavior, even though I'd actually explained exactly what stress behavior looks like. And every place I've gone to work at, I've always gone, this is what I look like when I'm regulated, and this is what I look like when I'm dysregulated. You know, so it's more because I've come from developmental trauma, I know that I have to work exceptionally hard at my nervous system. So I always like to just share with people this is what it is. And also when my nervous system, when I go out of my window of tolerance, actually I need support. I don't need judgment, I need support. And I've got used to now actually talking into this, because we don't talk about it because we think it's a failure. And I'm like, no, actually, when I know what a beautiful heart I've got, and I know the person that I am, but I also know that there's a part of me that can get dysregulated. But that still doesn't stop who I am. And it doesn't mean that I don't do all the work to stay regulated, but there's times where the stress comes in really quickly. And I know as parents, you know, you have a couple of nights where you don't sleep, you know, and it's more, you can feel that dysregulation coming in. And then this is where the parents feel that they're bad parents. And I want to say, you're not. You're not. It's starting to know what your stress triggers are. And for me, sleep is a huge one, you know.
Of course. And it's so pervasive during the early years. So it's really hard to avoid. And that's where that, not judging and blaming yourself is so important. And just as an example, so before I even had my first child, I'd researched attachment theory, and I'd already been like, okay, yep, so I can see, you know, what's happened in my development, and I can see how I'm going to do it differently. And I'm going to be an, attachment-based parent, and I'm going to be respectful, and I'm going to do all these things, and I'm going to do everything naturally. And I did, and I started out that way, and then it was still really, really hard. So you know what I mean? It's like, even when you've got all of the knowledge, there's still the putting it into practice, and then you couple it with your baby's temperament, which can be affected by all sorts of things. I mean, anyone who's a parent knows that children come in with different personalities and different temperaments. And sometimes they might have things going on like reflux or colic, or, preterm birth, or whatever it is. So right from the beginning, there's all these factors. And so I was really well prepared on paper, but then I had very intense babies, and they presented as babies who had really stressful experiences. And so, even though I thought I'd done a lot of work on myself, I was like, wow, this is just going to bring up more and more layers of stuff. And they were just the most incredible teachers, and they still are. But it can be rugged, man. And the thing is that most of us, some people are lucky and they've got a really good support system, and there's grandparents and there's aunties, but unfortunately, we're still in this phase where most parents are trying to do it on their own, and often it's the mother on her own a lot of the time. And that's part of the stress as well, just not having support to begin with, practical support, emotional support. And so it becomes very important to be seen and heard, and to have someone ease you through all the things that come up, because yeah, there can be so much. Yeah.
And Kirsty, you've talked about so many things then. I'm just, because I was so busy listening to you, I wasn't writing them down. But
it wasn't a test.
no, because it's more, I really wanted to talk into some of this stuff, because a lot of the time, exactly what you were saying, you know, parents coming, going, you know, I've looked into all of this and I've done my work. And then they're going, why on earth do I sound like a parent that I said I would never actually be? And I think this is one of the things I actually do a course I take around. It's a free course for parenting groups, and it's what your baby would like you to know. And one of the things that I actually talk about is that when we become parents, we actually have worked on our self-reg, but we've worked on it before parenthood. So we've actually got our way that we self-reg ourselves before children come along. And so for some of us, we've actually learned that going to the gym works, or for some of us, we've realized that socializing is actually, so a huge need that we have is for social connection. And then children come in, and we either find that it's things that we used to do to downreg our stress, or it was things that we used to do to meet our core needs. And then so suddenly we don't realize that these things are now missing from our life. And so it actually puts us into a hidden stress. And then what I was saying to you, when we're in a stress perspective, if we've got any insecurities from the past, it will supersonic. So once we get it, literally comes out, and it's more, before you even know it, you've reacted. And I think this was one of the huge ones, because in Penny Brownlee's toddler course, she used to talk about finding the pause. And I remember going, you know, I'm presenting this course and I'm going, hey, I'm struggling to find the pause. And it was like, how on earth can I teach this course if I'm struggling to find it myself? And so again, this was another golden thread which I was pulling, because I was like, okay, yes, we're supposed to find this pause between reacting and responding, but I can't. And I'm just watching, my screen. I hope I'm not going to go off here. Gosh, where was I before I realized I was about to lose you?
Yeah, it's all about dealing with the unexpected, right?
and I think that's that whole thing as well. And it's that whole thing of, oh, look at that. I was drying my hair before coming on here, and I forgot to actually put my plug back in again. So in the past, I would have been,
and it's okay. Like,
yeah,
you don't
I would
have,
be mortified about
it would be so easy to go into a spiral over even these small things, isn't it? And it's so silly, and part of you knows it's silly, and part of you's like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that?
And
Self-criticism.
that society of judging. And so it's more, this happens, and this is real life, and it's not. And again, I think in some ways I love the universe, in that so many, and this is why I stopped facilitating the parent infant courses the way that I did, because parents needed to realize that they were good enough. And the way that the courses were in the past, I had feedback. So this was one of my case studies that I took to the Pickler Institute, and particularly the parents that might have experienced trauma or are neurodivergent themselves used to come to my classes, and they used to go home and look at the chaos going on at home and go, I can't do what Donna's actually asking me to do. And I could feel that, because that's what I felt in those toddler classes. And so I rewrote everything because I really wanted parents to really get, your child only needs good enough. They do not need perfection. They need to see you making mistakes. They need to see that actually a mistake isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
And that's actually okay. And actually the key to security is actually when we do make mistakes and we come back, and after a rupture, we repair from it. And that is actually the true strength of security.
Yes, and I was just about to say that, but you already said it. That's the most important part, because perfect parenting doesn't exist.
It does not
it
exist.
does not exist, and there's lots of different ways to feel like you're failing as a parent. Very many and diverse ways of feeling like you're not good enough, and it's just noticing your own stuff and coming back.
And I would say, as a parent, again, look at your own self-reg, because children learn this not by us teaching it, but by them feeling it. So again, this is something I'm going to actually bring Ayana in here, because there was an interview I did with her, and she talked about how she used to have circle time, and she might be maybe one or two children singing, but then children would be out in the, so again, supermarket, hugely dysregulating. And she'd actually have parents coming back going, the children started singing in the supermarket. Now, there's a reason for this, because they would have felt safety in that circle time. So again, what I would be really advocating for adults is, sometimes you don't even realize that the children are taking stuff on, but they know in their body it feels good. So then when these children went to the supermarket, which is a dysregulating, there's lights that can affect the children, there's music.
I get freaked out in the supermarket. Thank you very much.
So suddenly singing is controlled breathing. So and again,
or humming.
Oh, humming. So again, I've
lots of kids hum.
Yeah,
spontaneously.
And I think this is that whole thing as well. It's more, there's things that children do because they know it helps their bodies, and we try and stop them. And it's like, actually, if a child is stimming, if a child is doing something, they are trying to get back into that window of tolerance. It's more, what that's actually showing us is that they actually need to do this. Let's not stop them, and let's figure out ways that we can support them. And yeah, I've had, again, as we were talking about this, so I had a mum, and it was when I was teaching my circular security course. And because one of the things I actually teach is time out for the parents, not for the children, but for the parents. And she brought me this case of, in the middle of the night, and she's their husband. He sleeps really, really well. He never hears the children, so there's never a chance that he's going to be getting up for the children. It's always. And this particular night, it's a struggle supporting everyone to go back to sleep again. And so she's just been on the course, and I've just been saying about time out for adults. And she's like, Donna, I couldn't just go away. It's more, if I left, there would have been a whole bedlam going on in that bedroom. And this is where, again, she used the humming, because she just started humming. She literally just closed her eyes and started humming. And before she knew it, she'd actually regulated herself, and she was able to actually finish. And this is actually so important, finding out what works for you. And I think this is why I particularly work with self-reg, because just like we're all individuals in how we like to do things, our bodies are all individual. And so it means what actually works for down-reg in one person. So again, if I go back to that little boy that I was working with, everyone wanted to do quiet corners. It was like, let's create this nice, comfy, quiet corner for him.
Yeah, but some kids need to move or swing.
And I'm watching him, and it's movement, fast movement, and actually as well, proprioception. It was actually throwing things, and it was that real. It was a lot bigger. And again, the adults didn't want it, but actually this is what this child needed. And if we're really being authentic and supporting children to understand their bodies, then we need to find multiple ways to support children to understand how they can actually self-reg. And I think, yeah, I don't know whether you've heard of Alison Davis.
Who does music and sound,
So again, I years ago went on her Brains Equal Behaviours course, which is very similar to Stuart Shanker's self-reg. But what I love about it is that, you know, she's very much talking about taking those brain breaks, literally working with your nervous system. And again, I think more of us need to be saying it's more, everyone's nervous system works differently. And so we need to work with that nervous system again, rather than fighting it. We're not going to get anywhere if we expect everyone to have the self-control, because that is not the way it works. Self-control comes from self-reg. So literally, if you can actually work with the nervous system, then even once we've got that impulse control going, we work with the nervous system, it makes it way easier for a child or an adult to have that impulse control. So, and we're not back 30, 40 years ago, because our world is way, way more stimulating. And that's the reason that, yes, things might have worked 30, 40 years ago. They don't work now. The amount of information that we have to process through our bodies is huge. And particularly for people that are more sensitive, you think, you know, what that's going to do to your window of tolerance. It's more, and for parents, if I can offer things to parents, it's more, start to know what your sensory banquet is. You know, is it hearing? Is it sound? Is it touch? You know, and the amount of mums that say to me they feel overtouched, or they can't stand the noise later on in the day. It's more, start to know who you are. Start to work with your own nervous system. You know, it's more, if noise is the issue, then sometimes just wearing noise cancelling earphones for a while, you're still there for your children, but what you're doing,
just dampening it down.
You're dampening it down, and also what you're doing is you're giving more time before you fling yourself out of your window of tolerance, which means that your children need you to be the one leading the way. So
and I think that's one of the really great things about the increased awareness of neurodivergence, is that much better awareness of sensory needs and different ways of regulating. That's much more mainstream now, and that's incredibly positive. And it's, you know, it's just one part of the bigger picture of how we regulate and how we connect, but things are certainly shifting, and that's really great. And it's, you know, when it comes to finding out about your own nervous system and finding out about your children's and their triggers and the things that set them off and the things that help them to self-regulate, I think it is really important to note that it might take time. It might take quite a lot of time sometimes. So, you know, for some children, you'll introduce something and you'll notice pretty quickly that it helps them to regulate. And other times, you know, you're going to have to do it over and over and over and over before they're able to bring themselves back from a meltdown more quickly or self-regulate. And it's, you know, and that's where it's really important to then be looking after yourself, because that work you're doing is so important, and it might look like it's not working, but it is. It's cumulative. And I can say from personal experience that eventually you will see the effects. So don't kind of feel like it's not working if you've tried it a few times and your kid's still freaking out and you're still freaking out. It's a journey.
What I would say, Kirsty, is sometimes people say about explosive behaviour, it's coming out of nowhere. And they say the child goes from 0 to 60 in seconds. What I like,
their nervous system started here, and then
that's exactly,
and there was hidden things, and then it went.
That sometimes that child starts at 50. They didn't start at 0. They
Yeah.
started at 50. And so there was only a few little stresses that needed to happen to flip them out of that window of tolerance. And I think that's my whole thing with that, again, with that little boy that I worked with. It took me 9 months of peeling back the layers of the hidden stress. And it was more instant after instant after instant. I would literally look at it and I would go, okay, where is this in the 5 domains? And again, it was then trying to get people to understand that he didn't always realize about taking his jumper off. And so again, so the sweat would be pouring down because he didn't have that interoception of getting those messages that I need to take my jumper off. Or again, he was such a social, beautiful little boy that sometimes morning tea, he'd spend the whole time chatting and not eating. And so not realizing those cues of hunger. And so it was more just piece by piece by piece, we started to actually look at all these different things until we got a picture of who he was. Because, and this is why I was going back, those 2 words that I said to you, the connection or protection. This little boy, when he was in connection, he was goofy. He was small. He was silly. He loved cuddles. When he was in protection mode, he was like he was 10 feet tall. He roared. He was big. He could be quite frightening, but that was him in protection mode. But I always had in my head the goofy little kid, because we need to remember that's the real authentic child, not the child that's in protection behavior.
Yeah, that's right. And so sometimes just a little, almost a mantra can be helpful. You know, those things like, my child's not giving me a hard time, he's having a hard time. Or something really simple like, I choose love, I choose love, I choose love. Yeah, because they are so small and so vulnerable. And often with the children who have those really explosive behaviors, when you're with them in the moment, there's often not much you can do. You just have to ride the storm and keep everyone safe. But when you're in your heart, you can see actually that they're afraid. You can see the
And
fear in their eyes and you can feel it. And so it's a child who needs support, not a child who needs, as you say, domination or,
what
yeah.
Donna Berry guides me about is to be as authentic as I can. So again, we talked about this before coming on. So Donna Berry is someone else that I work with Interplay, but she says that you are probably at your most safest when you are authentic and you can lean in. So it's more in those moments when things are big, try and be as real as you can in those moments and be as authentic, because what we want to do is we want to attune to the child so that they can feel seen and heard. And that actually means if you can actually be that raw authenticity yourself, then you're more likely to be able to attune in those moments, and that's when we actually connect. And I think that again, we've got into a society where we've understood about regulation, but it's regulation and attunement, and both work together. And that's how we reach people, because again, you can be as regulated as you like and not be able to see the child in front of you. But if you attune, and it might be, it might be that, if you feel scared, actually speaking into, gosh, I'm feeling scared in this moment, is this how you're feeling? And you might be surprised that the child actually goes, yeah. It's, I've worked with children where parents have said they struggle with being left with other people. And I remember with one particular little boy, I remember, mum had just left, and I remember just leaning in, and I was like going, oh, you're you don't like it when mum leaves. You feel pretty scared when mum leaves. And he literally looked at me and he just nodded, and I'm like, I know, it's actually okay. I'm going to stay with you until you feel safe. But so often we don't actually attune to children because we're scared of the emotions. I think people are scared that he was going to cry even more. Actually, what he did is he stopped crying and looked at me in actually disbelief that I actually got him. And to me, that's actually huge. It's huge because I could feel he didn't want his mum to go away. And it's more, and I could feel that he's looking around at all these new people. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it. You don't want to be here. And I will stay with you. I will stay with you until you feel safe. But we don't have these conversations with children. We don't, yeah, we don't have what I would call free and equal human being conversations where we lean in and actually really say what we mean, because we're so a lot of the time we get caught up in techniques and doing what we think we should do rather than actually what our heart's telling us to do. And actually when you let your heart lead, you get it wrong. Like I say, there's times when I say, oh gosh, you're scared, and the child just looks at me going, no, I'm angry. And I'm like, okay, you're angry, cool, you've told me now. So at least I know where we are.
Yeah. It's just feeling into it. And, you know, if you, as you say, if you try one thing, it doesn't work, don't be discouraged, because, you know, just as that example, some children will respond really well to that, having feelings named, and others will absolutely hate it. Like, don't tell me what I'm feeling. And they will respond better to you just being present with them and just being a safe presence. So, there's no one right way to connect with a child, which is why it's so important to come into alignment in ourselves. And then we have that trust in being present, feeling it, and feeling each other's hearts. It's so important.
And I think that's, again, full circle back to Ananda Rose, who's part of the Pickler world. And with parents, never get them out of their heart. You know, if you're in your heart, you can feel your child. And that is the most important place to be with your child.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's such important work you're doing, because things are definitely shifting a lot. But I know when my children were small, it was still very, I don't know, I think maybe, and I hope maybe Plunkett's changing a bit, but I mean, and fortunately for me, I was strong enough in myself to just kind of smile and nod at what they said and be like, it's not what I'm going to do. But they would say things to me like, oh, your baby's just manipulating you. And I was like,
no baby in the minutes. But again, what can
no, and it's such a terrible message. And, you know, for some people, they'll take that on board. And it's like, oh.
And again, Kirsty, this is a really important point as well, because for some people, so Donna Berry talks about you can't give what you haven't had. And so for some children, when a child cries and they haven't been co-regulated through crying, actually that can feel terrifying.
Yes, the crying is like an assault, because their own cries were not attended to.
And so this is actually huge. So again, I really want people to reframe this, you know. So again, you've mentioned Plunkett or anyone that's given advice to actually reframe this, because for some parents, this is excruciatingly painful. And it's not that they don't want to put the limits in. It's more, as the child cries, it is absolutely sending all the wounds of the past off, and they're literally sent back to a different place. And so this is my whole thing. So this is where my work with interplay works, is that so for some adults, they actually need another adult, whether that's their partner or whether that's their friend, to co-regulate them through the emotions that they haven't been co-regulated for. And I think that's huge. And again, this is where I really come into compassion, because I don't think we're used to supporting someone. So again, when I used to be a leader in early childhood, I could hear things going on, and it might be a teacher that I knew would struggle with anger. So that would be an emotion maybe they'd never had. And so I would literally come out, not to take over, but to co-regulate. to support them through being with the child while they stayed with the anger, and I kept them there without dissociating, co-regulated, kept them safe at their window of tolerance, to show them that they could actually do that, but they needed another adult's nervous system to be able to do that. And so I think that's actually where maybe some people have got it, they're slightly seeing it wrong. It's not that, you know, they're seeing that the adult isn't putting the limits in, and they're saying that the child's manipulating. It's not. As an adult, the pain is in the emotion that they never had looked after.
Yes, totally. And I wasn't saying that.
Oh, no.
I was talking about a tiny baby anyway. And of course, a tiny baby is just communicating when they cry. I'm not saying that I think they're manipulating, but you're so right.
No.
Yeah. I know.
I've heard this time and time again.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I'm really glad that you've actually said this, Kirsty, because it needs to be talked into. Because some mums, that crying,
to clarify.
So there's again, so sometimes when children go off to sleep, there's a cry that I've seen that some children let out to let out the energy. But for a mum, where crying can actually be a trigger, that's really hard to be able to support your child to just let the energy out of the day before they go to sleep. And they think they're doing something wrong, because that's actually how their child is naturally falling asleep. And so again, I find it really interesting, because I've worked with lots and lots of parents where someone has actually told them that their child is manipulating them, and it's like, whoa, back off and look at the full picture. It's not that whole thing about judging that parent. There's something in the interplay of that relationship between that child and that parent. And it might be that, again, the child is actually trying to let the parent know something through what they're trying to get the adult to feel. It's way, way more complicated, but there's people that just don't get that. And they can create great harm for a parent who is literally trying their best on a journey they've never actually been on before.
Yeah, it's so nuanced, and it comes back to all the things we experienced as children, and that's right. So for some people, a baby crying will make them angry because they had that parent that just shut them up, and so they were like, I didn't get to express. And of course, this is kind of subconscious.
Absolutely.
I didn't get to express my upset, so I'm really struggling to deal with that pain. Same when a toddler gets angry, or you know, wants something and just wants it now. And it's, there's so many ways when you're feeling supported, or when you're able to do it, or someone else is helping you, as you said, there's such a massive opportunity to see and heal all of our own wounding. But it really requires the ability to have that pause. And so I see, what you're doing is supporting people through that process so that they can get that benefit out of it, and their relationship with their children will continue to evolve in really positive ways, because there's such gold in all of those things that set us off. Yeah.
And there's just one last thing, because again, it was just something that you said, and from my attachment work. So 95% of what goes on is in the subconscious, and 5% is in the conscious.
Yeah.
And what people don't get is you can't outwill over the long term subconscious. And so if we have these hidden wounds, this is sometimes where we react or work in ways that don't seem logical, because it's actually the subconscious at work. And this is what I was saying to you, there's a whole load of whisperers, that voice that's whispering in your head is your subconscious. Not good enough, not safe, something's wrong with me, I'm bad. And this also all plays in. And I think this is what I loved about learning, about looking at the nervous system attachment all together as a modern attachment theory, is that it all plays out together. And once you can see how it all interacts, it's like, oh, why did no one tell us this? Why? It's more because we want to be conscious, and absolutely we can, but then we have the whispers that are caught in the memories of our subconscious. And until we can actually release those, then we're always going to be trying to come back into homeostasis. And whether that's actually about reworking the wound or meeting the needs, we do it in the most bizarre ways, because if we don't meet it in the positive, just like the child will look for connection in the negative, the same for the adult. We will meet those needs, or we will work with those wounds in a positive or a negative way. And again, no judgment, no shame, no blame, because this is actually what was programmed into us. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
It is. And I feel like we need to come back and have a second conversation about all of the stuff in the subconscious and the way that it carries through family lines, because there's so much truth in that saying about, you know, if you can heal yourself, or whatever words you want to use, then it does affect 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. But 7, I mean, more than that. It's more than 7, but yeah.
And the wounds change again. I think that's when you start looking at this stuff, and
epigenetics. Yeah.
You start looking at this, it's more, whoa, and what past generations have had to actually work with, and the wounds that they've had to work with.
Yeah.
It's huge. When someone actually says it stops with me, that's such courageousness for a parent to actually say this stops with me. And again, what I would say to people as well is that on your journey, literally live life knowing that there's going to be moments where, yes, there's probably going to be some work to do, but then you have plateau times, and then really, really celebrate and enjoy those plateau times before the next thing comes in. Because I think for so many of us, we've missed, or I know for me with my own journey with my own children, there was so much that I actually missed with that guilt and shame and thinking that I was not good enough. You know, and again, I was just talking to a friend yesterday about something my son had actually said. Now this, and I think these children coming through are quite incredible, because I think as a 13-year-old, we were driving home and he turned to me and he went, "Mum, you know, when you make a mistake, just let it go. Because if you keep going on and on about it, you just make it worse." And I'm looking at him going, all right, I'm your parent and you're 13. But they come in, I think the children coming in now, and particularly the sensitive children, come in with an inner knowing and an inner wisdom that is beyond what we have. And it's more, I get taken back time after time with my children when they say something very profound. Okay, that didn't come from me. Where on earth did that come from?
Yeah, that's right. And so we are here, we're honoured to guide them, but it's very much a co-creative journey. So we learn from them as we guide them, and it's very beautiful. And the only time is now, so it's never too late to become more conscious. And it's never too late to work on relationships. So don't think that because your children aren't small or whatever, and you can't do it. Just honor yourself wherever you are on the journey.
This is the beauty of the brain and plasticity. It's more, and even with the nervous system, it's more all of this stuff. There's many ways up the mountain. You find what works for you. It might be someone like me. It might be someone else. And I think it's more, always go with your inner wisdom. You'll connect to that person. But there's so many of us now. I know there's so many voices out there, and we're all saying the same thing. We've all gone up the mountain a different way. And you just need to find those people, whichever way. If you like the way they're going up the mountain, then follow them. But you might follow them and then you might detour off somewhere else with someone else. And that is just stunningly beautiful, because this is your golden thread. This is your journey with your children. and you know your children more than anyone else does, and you know yourself more than anyone else does, and that has to be hugely celebrated. So, you know, and I think that would be my gift, is if you feel it inside, it's pretty, you know, it's a pretty good bet that you're feeling something, and go with that, and don't let other people shut you down.
Yeah, just honor it. And I found that part of my parenting journey was really finding out and honoring how strong I was, because I had to be so strong to support my children, and I was willing to be so courageous for them, which then really highlighted how I hadn't honored myself in that way.
Yeah.
And you'll find things like that that just kind of tear you open and then piece you back together. That's, yeah, that deep beauty of that parenting journey, or any relationship. But the parenting is, you know, so close to the heart that it often highlights things the most obviously. Yeah.
And what I would say is, again, just that quick reframe of, rather than a trigger, this is just showing me something I didn't have. And
information.
And just to say thank you. Again, it's more, whether it's an adult or child, thank you for showing me this, because I didn't know there was a part of me that I still needed to look at. And even now, even with all the work, and I would say you probably say it as well, Kirsty, all the work I've done, there's still times where I'm like, okay, it's from another angle. Whoa, thank you. I didn't even realize that was still there. Cool. All right, let me have a look at that again.
Yes, it's an ongoing process, and yeah, Zen mind, beginner's mind. There's no kind of I'm there now.
And I think that's why we want
to
advocate is live, enjoy your families, make those memories. You know, it's more, don't beat yourself up, no shame, no guilt, because I think if we all came together and actually talked together, and we were all raw and authentic and vulnerable, you'd actually see that actually what you're going through is no different to someone else. But we've got a society where that isn't safe. And I want to change that. I want to change to where vulnerability is seen as a strength, where compassion is seen as a strength. You know, this is the society I want to live in.
Yeah. And I think we are moving that way.
I
It's
think
unstoppable,
so.
and it's just a matter of the process, how long it takes. And yeah, so these kind of soul connections are so important, in finding your people and going on your journey.
Absolutely.
It's a big adventure. So yeah, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. And maybe just to mention, you've got a new membership, is that right? Is that new?
Well, it's new, and it's really interesting because I'm working in a totally different way to how I've worked before. So I've created it, and I created it with the idea that it was going to be a 52-week membership. And I created it with I was going to get 52 pieces of papers and write out what was actually going to be each week. I'm actually working very intuitively with this. So so if you come and join me, what I've tried to do is I've tried to create all my deep work, but I also know that finances can sometimes stop people. So I've tried to create something which is $10 a week, where I'm showing you all the foundations and how to work holistically. So the first 12 weeks, I'm trying to put into place all the different things and giving you an idea of the theory, because I think if you can understand the theory, it helps to make difficult situations become a little bit more safe. And then what I'm doing is, as we go on, I'm going into some of my deeper courses, but I'm putting it into this membership. I'm also getting in guest speakers. So again, Kirsty, you listen to Donna Berry? She's quite incredible, isn't she?
Yeah, and for me, I was like, yes, like, you know, like I just agree, you know, but it's really it's important stuff, and she expresses it
It's a big
in a great way.
It's a big talk, and she's coming back to actually do. So that was where she sort of said things as they were. She's coming back to now put it more into a container of hope. So it's a 2-part one, but it's more, I'm trying to get people in that are thinking outside the box, people that I admire. Because also part of the membership is you might meet someone and go, actually, that's my person, that's my tribe. And what I wanted was, I don't want to create something where I'm holding on too tight. I want to create something where if someone comes and speaks and you go, actually, this is my starting place, then that you can go off and do that. But I also wanted to create something which was a community. So again, Ayana's part of that as well. And because some of the hugest times for people is actually when we do nothing, when we relax. And so what I'm also trying to build into it is connection time. So when I work as my mentoring, I work with you to find your core needs. Now, every single person so far I've worked with has an element of connection, whether that's emotional connection, social connection, or community. They're always really top up there in the needs. So what I've done is I've also weaved into the membership where, like, once a month we've got a want nothing time, and Ayana's coming along and we're just doodling. And it was actually really, really powerful. So we had a small group the first session and we just doodled, but each one of us got a message from just that doodling. And I think it's connecting us back to that inner wisdom, because that inner wisdom is so powerful. The other
creating a space for it to emerge.
Absolutely. So the other thing, it's more, I know myself, I was been looking for a meditation group, but I want a silent, I don't want a guided meditation. I just want 15 minutes where we go into a meditation state. So I'm creating it because it's more, I want to create community where you can just pop in and not fix things, but know that this is actually part of actually how you actually open up into your life force. So for me, if you meet your needs, then we're going to actually open up into our life force, which is going to help you on your parenting journey. So I'm creating, I suppose, the membership that I wanted when I was a young mum. And that's a community where we can be held safely. And then if you get to know me, then there's deeper work that I do. Again, I'm an attachment mentor, and I also do interplay, which is actually working as it says, interplay. I work with relationships that might be struggling, but I work through play. And I speak into the unspoken, which is what's caught within the subconscious. But the child shows us what's caught through what they bring up through play. And oh my goodness, it is incredible. It's incredible work. And I'm really hoping I can bring Donna's work here into New Zealand, because it really needs to be felt, not even seen, it needs to be felt, because I know I'm growing as a person facilitating it. So yeah, it's incredible, absolutely incredible work.
Yes, thank you so much. It's been such a good chat, and I will put some links so you can find Donna's work and all the things she's been talking about. And maybe we'll chat again, because I feel like there's so much more to say, but it's time to go and give my kids dinner.
But I think this is like I say before I go, but this has been a 10-year journey for me, literally. And that's why I've called it the golden thread, because I have been pulling my own trauma journey and unfolding that. And you, Kirsty, you will have your own golden thread. Someone else will have theirs, but the beauty is we all weave together. And I think that's what I want people to see, is even those people that trigger you, they're part of that weaving. And it's such a beautiful tapestry, such a beautiful, beautiful tapestry.
Yes.
So I have loved this, Kirsty, and I love your wisdom, your deep wisdom I can hear when you talk.
Likewise, so deep honor to you, and thank you to everyone listening, and we'll catch you here again next time on the Neurodiversity Controversy. Big love. Mhm.